How's everybody doing? Today is February the 10th. We're going over big money patterns from we'll start off with the 8th. And I just want you to pay close attention to fire, number 1, number 2, triple dollar signs, and black sheep. Let me make this where everybody can see. Hold on, let's do it like this. Two, 4, 3, 0 is a pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I guaranteed that pattern would manifest on February the 8th. If you can see, I gave it to them on the 5th. I told them for investment purposes only. If you want to win, you focus on my top 5 4 digits. 1, 2, 3. Specifically, also guaranteeing the number 3 big money pattern in Georgia. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go through these here, right here. Check out the big money pattern right there. 2, 5, 19, 27, 31. Ladies and gentlemen, 2, 5, 27, 31. Just missing one number. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. 3, 4, 1, 9 on February the 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised that pattern would manifest. 2, 6 to 2, 16. It happened on 2, 9. Ladies and gentlemen, 215. Ladies and gentlemen, only 6 motherfucking hours. And I told them it would happen straight in Tennessee. You see it for yourself. Here I go again showing off, ladies and gentlemen. I told you, I promised that these numbers will manifest by the deadline date. You see it for yourself in writing. Ladies and gentlemen, 8340. Ladies, what's happening now? What's happening now? Okay, I see what's happening now. They want to play games with me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, 8340, February the 9th. I told my VIP, check out that fire. 8340 on fire. 8340 on fire for the 9th. 26 to 215. Straight! Thousands upon thousands. 0709. I told you to watch out for the black sheep. The black sheep will tell you exactly what number nobody will be considering. Here it is, right here, right now, from February the 6th to February the 15th. That black sheep was on time to manifest February the 9th in Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, 285. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise the number 1 motherfucking big money pattern would manifest straight between the dates, February the 3rd and February the 13th in Georgia. Number 1 number for investment purposes only. How many times do I got to keep saying it before they want to take me out the box? 802. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Georgia for Ohio, 802. Ladies and gentlemen, straight to win. Focus on the top 5. I put it in writing for the instructions. To win, focus on the top 5. I promise the first 2. 1, 2, straight. How hard is that? Ladies and gentlemen, 7, 4, 8, 7. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Black Sheep on time. February the 9th, it drops. I told you, between the 8th and the 17th, nobody is going to be considering winning with that number. Ladies and gentlemen, 0, deuce, deuce. Ladies and gentlemen, again and again and again, my only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. Straight! I put it in writing. February the 5th, I told you, look out for it between the 6th and the 15th. Straight! Ladies and gentlemen, 0, 6, 1, 8. That's a pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, my number 1 motherfucking big money pattern right there to manifest. February the 6th to February the 15th. Ladies and gentlemen, 3, 2, 9, 1. It's a pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise, if you want to win, you focus on my top 5 4 digits. I promise you those first 2 will manifest February the 5th to February the 15th. It dropped on the 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, 190. Ladies and gentlemen, Florida for Florida. You see it for yourself. I told you, if you even want to come close to winning, it's a prerequisite to join. I am no longer taking individuals who just think they want to win. You have to know that, hey, I am going to invest in the best, and Mr. Bascomb is the best at what he does. If I promise you that a number will manifest between some dates and you don't invest, there's no way you can manifest what I have already seen happening. You see it for yourself in writing every single day. 190, what did they drop? 190. Ladies and gentlemen, 137. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised the triple dollar signs. And also, if you want to win, focus on my top 5 3 digits. I promise those triple dollar signs. As a matter of fact, that's the first set of triple dollar signs you're going to see. There's only 2 for your 4 digits. And you can see it drop between the dates, the 5th and the 15th on the 9th. If you invested, you did great. Straight! Ladies and gentlemen, 0639. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, only 17 hours. The very last number you see will manifest first. And I can do this in less than 24 to 48 hours. And I put it in writing that I can do this. Ladies and gentlemen, you have your 6589. Ladies and gentlemen, As you can see, if you want to come close to winning, focus on my top 4 digits. I promise you those triple dollar signs will manifest February the 1st to February the 10th in Tennessee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, boom, boom. Triple dollar signs, I promise you, will manifest. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go with 6, 1, deuce, deuce. Ladies and gentlemen, your black sheep on time to manifest on February the 9th. And I told you that the black sheep don't lie. Nobody was going to consider it. Now, watch this. Watch it closely. Black sheep, on time again and again. That right there, if you do your due diligence, you will see the big money patterns that are right there in front of you. Ladies and gentlemen, 4, 6, 6. Ladies and gentlemen, my only motherfucking big money pattern on fire, 15 hours before it debuted, I knew it was coming straight for Tennessee. I put it in writing and I told you that I don't practice this, but I can make it happen in 24 to 48 hours. I did this in 15. Ladies and gentlemen, 610. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pattern. You see it for yourself. The number one motherfucking big money pattern for Tennessee. 28 to 217. Ladies and gentlemen, 28, it drops on 29. Come on now. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Black sheep, on time, straight. And as you can see, less than 24 motherfucking hours. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go with your 506. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pattern. You see it for yourself. To win, you have to focus on my top 3 digits. I promise you that I am going to work my hardest to make sure you don't have to go far to win with the first 2 numbers. You see it for yourself. And this was Michigan for Michigan. Here we go again, 7, 0, deuce, deuce. Ladies and gentlemen, Black Sheep in 6 hours told us, hey, look, nobody is going to be wagering on that combination. Why don't you box it heavy? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you got your 516. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pattern. Your big money pattern told us, hey, look, to win, focus on the top 5. Don't go far. I promise you, the first 2 I worked the hardest on, and you will win. You see it for yourself. Boom, boom, boom. Black sheep, on time to manifest. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, look at that right there, straight. Ladies and gentlemen, straight. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, 910. Ladies and gentlemen, guaranteed in 6 motherfucking hours to manifest, straight to win. Focus on my top 3 digits. They will manifest February the 9th. This dropped February the 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, look at me go. Watch this. Triple dollar signed it, which I promised those triple dollar signs plus to win. If you want to focus on the top 5, guess what? You're going to win. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The triple dollar sign will manifest February the 1st to February the 10th. This dropped on February the 9th, straight. Ladies and gentlemen, you got your 892. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you that I am going to work my hardest on that number 1 to make it run straight. And guess what? I don't practice this, but I can make it happen in 24 to 48 hours or less. Ladies and gentlemen, 973. Ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee to manifest 973. If you wanted to win, focus on the top five. They will manifest February the 6th to February the 15th in Georgia. That was straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 261. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, it's a pattern, a big money pattern. And I told you, you won't have to go far. Just do that number one big money pattern. You got 6895. Boom, boom, boom. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you, triple dollar signs. And if you want to win, if you focus on the top five, which I promise those triple dollar signs will roll out in Georgia. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, 4956. Ladies and gentlemen, only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. A 5-year-old can pick out fire. You see it for yourself. Between the dates, February the 1st and February the 10th. It dropped on February the 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, 0769. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, if you want to win, you focus on my top five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The triple dollar signs will manifest. I promise this. February the 3rd to February the 12th in Texas. It drops on the 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, 360. Ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee 360 would manifest straight. And as a matter of fact, in most cases, I told you I don't practice this, but I can make it happen in 24 to 48 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, 063. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pattern, and I got the number one, 063, straight. You see it for yourself from 24 to 213. Ladies and gentlemen, 873. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised the number one motherfucking big money pattern would manifest straight. 873. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep it moving. Down the line, you got your 7667, 7667 black sheep on time to manifest straight on February the 10th. Ladies and gentlemen, 75 deuce, 257 is a pattern. The top two big money patterns. Here you go again, 75 deuce. You got your 168, 168 straight, number one big money pattern. 2104, number one big money pattern. Georgia for Georgia. Look at this right here. Georgia. Look at this right here. And then guess what? Michigan dropped it too. And look at this right here. We said it would do it straight. Here we go again, 054. Ladies and gentlemen, promise to manifest. Right there, let's see here. Deadline met on 2/10 today. This is a cheat sheet. There you go again. Number one, met the deadline date. Here we go again, 550. Ladies and gentlemen, 550 straight. 15 hours. I promised the very last number you would see would manifest straight first. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 846 deuce. Here we go again. Right there, very last number you see. 4286 is a pattern, and I met the deadline for that pattern. Here we go again, 5428. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the only number on fire. You see it for yourself. And this was Florida for Florida. You don't have to go far. Ladies and gentlemen, I even guaranteed you would see that big money pattern manifest today. Ladies and gentlemen, 122. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised you would see it in 2 hours. 122 straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 267. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised to manifest 267 by the deadline date. You see it for yourself. I put it in writing. Told you on January 31st that I walked into the future, saw 267, and it was going to drop straight by the deadline date. And there we have it, straight by the deadline date. Ladies and gentlemen, I am done. I will see you all at the winner's table no matter what. If you're interested in joining a winning team, by all means, report to dynamicallydriven@gmail.com, or you can call me directly. Once you call me directly, you have to tell me what my prerequisite is before I would even start a conversation with you. I am not going to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste mine.